Love isn't a decision. It arrives unannounced, breeds madness, and leaves a sea of ruin in its wake. Hate him or love him, either way, he's in certain hell. And today, we're chatting about Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin.
Which is, for those who've listened to the first episode, our dark romance episode, this is a triggering book for Jenn. Do we want to
Yeah.
recap on what made it triggering for you, or do we just want to refer them back to that episode and then just talk about the book itself?
I mean, I feel like we'll probably end up landing on it as we talk about it.
Okay.
So, since you read it most recently, and it's so funny because like when we've talked about like books in the past that I've read
Mm-hmm.
and you're reading for the podcast, like the one we just did, Still Beating. Like I remember the overall book,
Mm-hmm.
but there aren't like specific scenes that live rent free in my head. And Sea of Ruin, I've read 2 years ago. And I'm pretty sure that from start to finish, I could give you like all of the main big scenes throughout the entire thing. And I still, 2 years later, don't know how to rate this book. So
Okay.
today's discussion will be very interesting. And I'm so excited because no one I know has read this book, and I have been dying to talk to somebody about it.
So I'm going to say like this. This is what a dark romance is supposed to be. It has all of the elements. It makes you feel all of the feels. But I also want to say that I feel like it's close to a bodice ripper. I think the only difference between this and a bodice ripper is a bodice ripper goes for years. Like this is like less than like 3 or 4 years. A bodice ripper spans like 5+ years. So it definitely, this is, if people want to know what a dark romance is, this would probably be what I would recommend or suggest. And I feel like out of everything that we've read, besides Dead Soldiers versus Tailors, this is the darkest thing that we have read, hands down.
100%. Yeah. Like, because even with Dead Soldiers and Tailors, like you had a lot of abuse off page
Mm-hmm.
that was mentioned, and then you had like a very intense abuse scene, sexual assault scene on page.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, there were like three, four sexual assault scenes, like at least.
So she was almost raped as a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Then she was almost raped by the prisoners on Ashley's boat because he threw her in there
Mm-hmm.
first.
Yeah.
Then there was the other commander, and then those were the 3 sexual assaults, but the 4th scene was they just beat her because they thought she had syphilis.
Well, I mean, when the commander caught her, that was I would consider that sexual assault in what happened. Doesn't he like I'm trying to think of how the scene went, but it was a scene that you messaged me and you're like, this was not a sexy spanking. And I was like, no.
Okay, the punishment. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That one, I think that's a borderline scene.
Yeah, I mean,
That would be
yeah,
like
I would
dub nom-com.
yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
I think
But still.
before her and Ashley like admit their feelings, I think a lot of their scenes is dub nom-com for sure.
Mhm.
Because like she's like, I like him, but why do I like him? Like why? I know I have this plan, but I really don't want to, you know. Okay. Yeah. Like I'm not going to lie. Like I read the first part of the book, because we were supposed to meet and then that didn't happen because things came up. And then I literally just finished it last night because I knew we were meeting this
I
Same.
figured it was going to be like the last because we were recording. I had forgot we were recording, and then I was like, "Wait, are we recording?" Because she didn't say anything about finishing, and I was like, she had to have finished it within like the last couple of days.
Yeah, and it's not that because it was bad, and it's not really because it was dark. I have a thing I don't like historicals, and I didn't realize that it was historical.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the idea of the pirates, but it was I don't know if I really have anything bad to say about it, to be honest. Like, I understand why it was triggering for you, or I can assume why it might be triggering because of all of those scenes, but I guess
Yeah.
I'm so used to reading bodice rippers that it like, don't get me wrong, like, the scene, like, the yeah, I was like, "Oh my gosh, please don't let this happen," like, I was totally rooting for her, and, like, I didn't want all the bad things, and when the bad things happened, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening, why is this happening?"
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed it very much. I
I I was okay until the last like scene where she was a prisoner on the other boat. Like that scene, that's when I stopped. And I think it was at like 72, 73%. And I sent a message into the Bang book club. I was like, y'all, I need to know, like, does our girl get a happy ever after? Because if she doesn't, I am out. Like at this point,
Mhm.
she's been through more trauma, more like bullshit than I can put up with for her not to get a happy ever after.
Yeah.
And even that topic was kind of controversial. You know, they're like, technically, yes.
What do you
But
mean
then some people were,
technically?
but some people were like, no, I didn't really count it as a happy ever after. You know, I didn't like the way it ended. I don't like who she ended up with, blah, 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 blah. And then some people were like, yes, absolutely. It wraps up, really nicely. I was like, okay, that's helpful.
Not at all. And see, this is okay, this is gonna sound really, like I know there's, like, an English lit word in there, but I don't like reading other people's reviews because they're liars. Like, whoever said it's not happily ever after, they're a liar, they don't know what the definition of happily ever after is. Those who
Well, I mean, it's also something like interpretation. Like, I mean, I could see why some people wouldn't be happy with how she ended with things.
yeah, but the definition of a happily ever after is she gets with the person that she's meant to be with, that and they run off into the sunset together.
Yeah, but I feel like there's definitely an argument that she should have only had to have ended up with one person that she really loved instead of having to like not settle but like concede that commander guy and pirate guy were already in love before she came along. I agree with you.
Okay.
I like the way it ended.
And
I like the way it ended.
I'm I'm drawing battle
I,
lines in my head right now.
no, I liked the ending. I liked that she ended up with
Okay.
both characters. I loved that development of the story. But like,
Well,
I could see the argument.
I wanna go back. Irregardless of personal preference of who they wanted her to end up with. I'm sorry, I have to battle this out for those listening. She still ended up with who she was supposed to.
Yeah.
So, again, the people who are saying that there's no happily ever after do not know the definition. Because you may not like the person, but that's your personal preference. But for the character, she got her happily
Well,
ever
yeah,
after.
that's true. Yeah.
So, and I kind of called the thing between Ashley and Priest.
Same.
I was like, I'm like, this can't, like, no, that can't be it. And then the sister was brought up. I'm like, okay, maybe it's the
Mm-hmm.
sister, but I'm like, there's something here. There
Yep.
has to be. And then that just made my heart break for Priest. Like, because that he gave a vow to Ashley before he met her and he couldn't break
Mm-hmm.
that vow and he didn't even though it destroyed his world and that just That I love loyalty, like,
Yeah.
but he didn't stop fighting for it even though he couldn't tell her.
Yeah.
Like,
True.
I
Yeah.
loved it. I think maybe the only thing no, I'm, like, walking through the book in my head, I don't know if there's anything I did not like about this book.
I as you know, I mean, I really struggled with it. I've never read a bodice ripper, so maybe it's not a genre I need to explore
No,
because
if this is triggering for you, absolutely not. I would never recommend a bodice ripper because it's years of
yeah.
abuse and bodice
Yeah.
rippers.
Yeah, I don't think I could stomach it because this was a tough read for me. I The thing that kept me going is that Godwin did such a phenomenal job of writing her character. Like,
Mhm.
you rooted for her, you wanted her to come out on the other side, you wanted her to be victorious in the end and and get her happy ever after. And that was literally the only reason I kept reading, was because I'm like, I just want to see this woman win. Like, I just need to see her win. And that was what for me drove me to complete the book, was you just couldn't not root for somebody like that. I think what I struggled with is, you are talking about like so many incidents of assault and abuse and neglect and that kind of thing over like the entirety of the book, that my logical brain is like, I have no idea how this girl is going to like live the rest of her life without intense therapy. So like, when you have that much abuse in a book, I have a hard time suspending belief to like believe in the happy ever after, because like in the real world she would need so much like therapy and understanding and patience, and men who really like like take it easy on her in multiple ways, mentally, emotionally, physically, all the things, and none of that was there. Like, they're both just like, Priest was a little less aggressive from what I remember, like once they got back together. But I mean, still the girl needed like a spa day, spa week, a good therapist, and like I have no idea what else. And she got a couple days in bed and lots of sex.
I feel like she got weeks in bed.
Was it weeks?
I think it
I
was
couldn't remember.
almost 2 months.
Really?
Yeah, because it took them 5 weeks to get where Ashley's private residence was, and then it gave, like, a
Mm-hmm.
progression of, okay, after such and such time, she could set up, after such and such time, she started walking and then used a sword. So, I took it for a few months, at least 2,
Hmm.
of her healing and them taking
You
care of her.
you would know better than me, because I mean, like I said, it's been a couple years since I've read it, so
Yeah,
I
because,
don't
I
know
mean,
how.
because after the beatings that she took, yeah, it had to have been a couple months of
Yeah,
slowly being able to get up and move. She just did a really good, clean way of jumping by, doing those little things, and then all of a sudden,
they're riding off into the sunset.
not necessarily. They're riding off to go, take down some ships, but on the sunset,
I would
yeah.
totally read a sequel of this.
I don't
No?
know if there's enough for a sequel. I mean, it could be a sequel if, like, the Navy caught up with them and, like, maybe Ashley got captured, and let me just say, I was hesitant about his name to begin with, and now I know why she gave him that name, because he was the other love interest.
Mm,
I was like, maybe that was one thing I didn't like. I didn't like his name. I
that's
think
fair.
an I think another thing, what was the other thing I was gonna say I didn't like? I would have liked let's go down the hypothetical road. I would have liked it better if if we had less of the sexual assaults, if we would have like maybe got rid of one of those or the beating or like whatever, and then I want to move her learning about their relationship like 25, maybe before the end of the book, and then that be the tension between them navigating this three-way relationship. That to me would have been way more gut-wrenching than those violent scenes,
Yeah.
because I like the angst, and I think that the whole but I think the only way for that to work would have had to have been a second miscommunication trope. Although technically him not telling her about Ashley is not a miscommunication, it's just a flat out, "I
Yeah.
cannot tell you." But I
Yeah.
think for what I want to happen, there would have to be some kind or no communication at all. She would have to have seen them almost kiss and then just leave again, and then them chasing after her while also trying to fight them amongst themselves to convince her that she's, she's their glue, she's their heart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would have been okay with something like that.
But I just don't think it fits her character, though. She's just too she doesn't follow the standards, so it shouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised that she is okay with them being together as long as she gets them to and they all love each other and live.
No, I completely agree. I definitely think like she was rightfully fine, with their relationship, because at the end of the day, like she was just ready to like be with her person and go on the next adventure.
I realized something that I was very upset about. I cannot
Oh, what?
believe she opened the stupid compass and then didn't get to read her dad's letter. That I did not like at all.
Mm,
I'm like, "You know you're gonna die because you don't know it? Like, why would you make that vow to yourself that you're gonna see the inside of it before you die knowing, like, you're never gonna see the inside of it because that was the deal that you made. They're watching you. Like, you're on." That upset me. I was very upset about that. I woulda not opened it.
you're gonna have to help me out. What happened?
So, Mad Dog or whatever, after they took over the Blitz of Ashley's ship, because Priest set them free, she got out of the other commander. They're on the island. They try to they want a piece of her because, she had his beard taken off. There were the prisoners on Ashley's ship.
Yeah.
But then Priest, did that whole syphilis thing, but then they're all about to be killed. And she's like, "Let me tell you what my dad left," because everybody knows who her father is, not parrot, pirate sharp. She has the compass that she hasn't been able to open, and she's like, "I have this. My dad left me treasure. You know who he is, but you have to abide by these things. And then once we get on the boat, I will try and open it, and I won't look into it, and I'll give it to you as long as you spare Ashley and Priest."
Mm,
But they won't rape her because they think she has syphilis, so that's when they beat her. And she
oh.
knows that she's going to die, and she makes a vow to herself, "Well, I need to see the end. I need to open this before I die. Like, I can't die without opening it." And that just bothered me because I'm like, if you know you're gonna die, we know you're gonna die, why would you give the people who are beating you, who are killing you, what they want?
Yeah, but it saved Priest and Ashley, didn't it?
Yeah, but they had already left. They had to leave them on the island. So Priest and Ashley aren't there no more. They're safe.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, that's the only thing I mean, I
Doesn't
understood.
she find out? Doesn't
She
she
doesn't
find out
she
what
gets
was
the
in the letter
treasure.
though?
No, she
Yeah.
doesn't.
Oh.
No, her dad had the map, but he wrote her a letter in there. And Mad Dog, she couldn't hear, and Mad Dog, I guess, apparently read it, or Mad Wolf, or whatever his name is. I don't know.
I don't remember.
He read it to his crew and then ripped it up into pieces in front of her and threw it into the ocean. So she never
Hmm.
got to. She like tried to read his lips, but
Yeah,
and
that
then they
probably upset me at the time too,
yeah,
because
then they
I
tied her up and then left her there to die. And then not too long after that, Priest and Ashley show up and save her. But I was really upset about that. I think that was a little too, but they did find the map for the treasure. So they did get the
Yeah.
treasure, but she didn't get to know what the letter said.
Yeah. I probably blocked it out because I can't handle stuff involving dads.
Yeah. But when they got to the treasure, her dad did have a photo of her mom and dad there, painted or whatever they did back in the 1700s, of her mom and him while she was pregnant with her. So she at
Yeah.
least have the photo. But
Yeah.
yeah. You know another thing that kind of bothered me a little bit? Her, I don't know, pirate ship terms for people. Jobah, Jobah. I don't remember what his name is. I didn't like the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he's the one who hid the compass for Priest at the beginning. We find that out at the end. She's like, "Where did you hide my compass on my ship?" And he's like, "I gave it to Jobah." She's like, "That little shit." And he's like, "I knew you wouldn't do nothing. You trust him." I'm like, "Well, not anymore." But apparently she still does trust him. I'm like, "No." I
That's
needed
funny.
that. I needed that to be I don't know. I almost feel like, because we've had that episode about what makes a good heroine, and she doesn't necessarily give in, but in a way she kind of does. She toes that line very close. Like like for instance, after like Ashley takes her anally for the first time and he watches her like break down, like after he gets her off, she's like, "Well, I might forgive you." Right? Like, I mean, I know it's different because, it's kind of like the captive a little bit. She's the captive, so she's got to play her cards right. But at this point,
Yeah.
she's already aware that he has feelings. Like they've kind of already admitted feelings for each other.
Mm-hmm.
She really is just kind of, and I don't know. There were just little things like that. I guess now that we're talking about it, the same thing with Joe. But like, I mean, I understand that Priest is your husband and they have a camaraderie or whatever. But if push comes to shove, who is he going to pick if he had to, you or him? And you have to be careful because first off, you're like the first woman female pirate captain. So like I know that they like respect you because they came for you multiple times. Otherwise, they would have just took your ship and ran. Like I get that. There's loyalty
Right.
to a
Yeah.
point. But when you have like the core group, when loyalty is questioned a little bit, and maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe it's not that big of a deal for the whole overarching story arc, but
I
she
mean, I
toes
think.
that line.
I mean, from everything that again I remember her crew being really loyal to her.
Mhm.
I think I got the impression that Joba knew more than he let on.
Mhm.
So I think that's why he didn't say anything about the compass. Like he knew Priest well enough to know like he wouldn't arbitrarily cheat on
Mhm.
her, and Joba wanted them to do it together or whatever.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. I think at this point I'm just like being nitpicky.
That's fair. I mean, I loved the story and I loved the like development of the relationships and how like she tied in Priest and Ashley getting together, and then they were off to do their next thing, and but both were there to help heal her and all things. Like I did love the story. It is not something that like I would read again or want like recommendations similar to.
Yeah, I could see that. So now I know for future reference, don't recommend bodice strippers to Jen.
Hey, now we know.
Now we know. Which is now I'm thinking, about the one that's triggering for me, consequences. And that might be triggering for you because there is a lot of abuse in it. 'Cause, it's a husband wife thing for revenge. That's going to be
Mm,
interesting. It's going to be interesting. I don't think I have anything else. I really enjoyed it. I'm surprised that I enjoyed it. Again, because it checks a lot of things that I'm not usually a fan of, but I think, like you said, she did an amazing job writing this story, articulating it, giving, the
yeah,
characters. I almost wish there was more her and Priest on page than her and
yeah,
Ashley.
I completely agree.
I think that is a deterrent for me. I would read If there was a sequel, there would have to be actually, I don't even want a sequel, I just want more Priest in this one. Because
I just don't know how she would have done it unless she added it like you got a year or two before
mhm.
she left him. Like there's really no way she could have added more priest to the story. But
She
I kind of
would've
like that she starts and they're already separated.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so just going back to Bodice Ripper, if it had been like a true Bodice Ripper, we would have seen their whole courtship, or at least the beginning, like the middle, and then the end. Then she has the thing with Ashley, so then they would we would have equal amounts of time with them.
Right.
So by adding the first years with Priest, that would have made it span years, so then it really would have been a Bodice Ripper. Although maybe that might have changed it. No, it's still because of the things with Ashley and the abuse.
Yeah. I
I
was
gotcha.
looking to see how many pages it was. And I mean, it was 467 pages. I remember it being a fairly
Mhm.
long book. So I just, I think you would have struggled. I think she would have struggled to add depth to Priest's relationship with her at the beginning and still have, I mean, you would have been at a 700 page dark romance novel at that point. Like
Yeah, bodice rippers are
that's,
pretty can be really long.
oh really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
like 500 plus pages sometimes.
Hmm.
Because again, it's
Interesting.
spanning years. It's almost a saga. Like it's, you know, 5 plus years up to I think one of them I read it spans 10 years.
Yeah, there's no way.
So, I think Sweet Savage Love for those who read Bodice Rippers, please don't come at me if I'm wrong. I think Sweet Savage Love spans like 10 years.
Hmm. Yeah, that's too much. I
I
can
feel
do some dark romance apparently because like we've at least landed that I can handle some dark romance. But like this was where I draw like I read Tears of Tess, and I know it's something that like you know we'll eventually talk about on the podcast. But like I did not struggle with Tears of Tess the way I struggled with Sea of Ruin.
Really? Okay, now I'm more intrigued to read it.
Well, and I thought about saying something to you along those lines, but I was like, and part of the reason is because I want you to be able to go into it and have your own genuine reactions,
Uh-huh.
your own genuine, journey with the characters. So I really try not to give like one of my friends right now is she read Bridge Kingdom and Trader Queen, and then she started Inadequate Air like immediately.
Mhm.
And she was like, I'm so excited. I'm going to like devour this series. I'm like, you might. Like, I just didn't say anything because like the next two books in the series aren't, in my opinion, like they're not nearly as good as the first two.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sway your journey one way or the other, but yeah, that I didn't. You're talking about someone who is sold into sex slavery, and I did not struggle with it the way I struggled with this.
I think it also comes down to writing, how they write it, because
Yeah,
it's left up to our imaginations, and depending on the words that they use and how they, weave the story together, it can be more brutal for our own minds.
yeah,
But yeah, I didn't like her mom. I didn't like that even though you find out that she's secretly been in love with her dad the whole time, I didn't like how she treated her daughter like it was her fault. Like, no, bitch. You opened your legs. You fell in love.
yeah,
And I know you think that you're doing things right, but you didn't have to take it out on your daughter, your
yeah,
unhappiness. So,
yeah. Agreed.
I don't, I'm pretty sure there's more. I just can't think of anything. It was just really great, hard story. Like, it was brutal. Like, when we talk
Yeah,
about things in dark romance of being brutal or brutalized, this and it happening on page, we might as well just jump into the ratings. Are we ready to jump into the ratings?
Yes. Yeah.
So for the darkness, like brutalization, like on page,
Yeah.
different scenes and multiple times, like five, it's five skulls. Like there's no way
Yeah.
that it could be you cannot give this anything. If we should probably give it 8, to be honest, even though we're only on a scale of
I mean,
5.
here's my like this is where the rating system like you like and why if I send you because I have like this whole saved list of book recs. If I tell you to check your trigger warnings, like I want you to check your trigger warnings because you have to protect yourself. Where
Mhm.
like technically we rated Bridge Kingdom and Trader Queen 5 stars for Darkness 2 because it hit all of the themes that we talk about on the scale. But like Bridge Kingdom and Trader Queen do not read the way Sea of Ruin reads. So like I would recommend you should still read Bridge Kingdom and Trader Queen, even though it's a 5 skull darkness rating. Sea of Ruin needs to have like a 10 skull darkness rating. And if like you need to double and triple check your triggers, and also like if you get 70% into the book and it's too much, like give yourself grace and DNF or skip ahead a chapter every other 10 chapters.
I think it's a level of intensity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
now having spoken of this and read this book, do we need to revamp the scale?
I think I know we always put like caveats
Mhm.
typically like in our show notes, but I mean potentially we may need to revisit the darkness scale because like this is a lot darker than anything we've read on the podcast so far, except for potentially Dead Soldiers and Tailors. And that wasn't anywhere near this. And again, you're still talking multiple scenes
Mhm.
with, on page and dub non con with that duet. And really, I only think about the first book when we say that. I feel like the second book goes
Yeah, the
so
second
well.
one was just a fluffer. Okay, this is something that we're gonna have to reevaluate. I love this because then it changes everything, and that means that we can go back and re-rate everything on a new scale.
Yeah, I don't think we have to like go through like episodes, but I do think,
Mhm.
updating the notes and
Yeah.
that kind of thing would probably be a good idea. Just because like I went into this book completely blind. Like this was the first book that I was like, "Oh, you know what? When I read dark romance, it would probably be a good idea for me to check triggers." Because prior to this book, I never read about triggers.
Okay.
I was like, "Meh, I'll be fine." And
Okay.
wasn't.
So, for the sake of this episode, with our current scale, now we know that we need to revamp it, because of intensity wise, because like you said, this is not at the same level as Bridge Kingdom.
Right.
On our current scale, it is definitely 5 plus plus plus.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the spice.
5?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
say
Because once you get to like the consensual
at
and
least a
even like
4
the
for
dub
sure.
non, yeah. Like even the dub non con and then the consensual scenes, like all of them are hot. And then once you get to the
Yes.
end of the book, you have multiple partners. And yeah, I mean, like the whole first like dub non con scene with Ashley and her, that's a pretty kinky scene. So I say we'd
Mhm.
have to do 5 chili
Yeah.
peppers.
Yeah, 5 peppers.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
So what is your rating overall?
I'm struggling with it because I'm gonna probably say a 4.
That's where I landed, was a 4.
Like, I don't wanna say a 5 because I don't know if I would reread it. Not that that makes it a 5. Actually, no, I think I'm gonna stick with the 4. I would give it a 4, like a very high 4, like a 4.9. But I just can't fully give it a 5 for the even though the few things that I was being nitpicky about, because as an angst whore, I would rather have that than the violence and the sexual assault, and I didn't get that amongst the 3 of them,
Yeah.
but it's a high 4 for me. Like,
It's
it's
a 4.
definitely oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's definitely gonna be something that we will talk about, and it will be a foundation and a baseline of because normally I would use cliche, I know. Normally, I would use Den of Vipers as a baseline for some
Mhm.
people because of the scenes. No. Den of Vipers is no longer gonna be my baseline because that is, candy compared to this.
Yeah.
This is so much more darker, and I think it's the intensity, and I think
Mhm.
when we do look at the new scale, we're going to have to add consent in there as a factoring for one of them.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
level of that, because that's can't believe that's not something that we thought about when talking about dark romance, but here
Yeah.
we are in season 2, we're learning. It's a learning curve, peeps.
Well, I think there's a big difference when when you're talking about dark romance, you for most dark romance books, there is an element of dubcon, non-con, you
Mhm.
know, but and I mean and I guess really like dubcon more than anything. Like I think of The Ritual, Haunting Adeline, Haunting Adeline was I feel like Haunting Adeline and Hunting Adeline, and I know we haven't talked about those on the podcast, but like those are typically my baselines because that's something that a lot of people, like a lot of book talkers, a lot of popular, like it's part of the popular series and it hits the dark scale so well. And I feel like Sea of Ruins still is darker
Okay, I'm gonna
than
have
it.
to add those to my I mean, they're on the list, but push them up further on the list to read.
Well, I think and I guess what when I read something like Haunting or Hunting Adeline, you go into it knowing that like even the non-con scenes, the whole time you're in her head, you know, like
Mhm.
now I didn't know you hadn't read them, so now I don't want to say anything too much. Uh, Let me think. Okay, so like The Ritual, like she's involved with him. Even if she's not like consenting, she's aware of it in some capacity, either like mentally or after the fact or whatever. And he doesn't brutalize her. Where like I think the difference here is that one, you're not talking about the main male character. I think that's another differentiator. Like when you're talking about Hunting and Haunting Adeline, The Ritual, anyone who's quote unquote abusing her, That Sick Love is another good one. It's the main guy. So like at the end of the day, they actually love their they love her and like they're either pushing her to a different limit or they realize she's turned on by it or whatever the case is there where this she's being brutalized by someone who is not who she ends up with
Mhm.
and there's zero consent like it is true assault and rape. It's not dub or non-con. And
Right.
I think that's the only other book we've read on for the podcast that hits that is Dead Tailors and or Dead Soldiers and Tailors. And that scene was not nearly as explicit and it was one
Mm-mm.
scene.
Yeah.
And this was I think 4 is what we
Multiple.
ended up at. Yeah.
I couldn't have summed it up better than myself, Jen. Like, you do that. This is why we're co-hosts. You have the beautiful words. I just have the feelings and the grunts.
Well, I think, it's one of those, I feel like through this episode we've had several revelations on why this book is so much harder
Mm-hmm.
versus other quote unquote dark romances.
Yeah. I'm really glad that I've read it, because not only for the new baseline, but to understand your not space, your comfort level in reading
Mm-hmm.
now. And I can
Yeah.
appreciate it now that I've read it alongside you.
Right. Yeah. All of that to say, I through this conversation, I landed on a 4 because at the end of the day, like, I was rooting for the heroine so hard. I I'm struggling with saying a strong character. When I say that she is a strong character, what I mean is that she was so well written and she had zero quit. She was also written. What I don't why I'm struggling saying strong is because in the real world, you do, like, if you experience something like this, she is not a
She's the exception, not the rule.
representation. Yeah, she's not a representation of how to get through, manage that type of abuse. Like, that's why I'm struggling with saying she's a strong character. She's a strong character in the sense that, like, I loved her, rooted for her. She was so well written. In the real world, all I would want to do is, like, steal her away and say, okay, just stay here in this white padded room. I'm going to get you, like, the best therapist in the world. And once you get through that, then, like, let's just go have tea or something.
Yeah, it would have made it more realistic if, like, maybe as she was healing, like, she had nightmares or, like, struggled a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I'm really not, I don't know, especially this book, not so much the other books. And I've mentioned this very lightly in other episodes. Like, what I'm struggling with, I guess, in this book so much is that there was no PTSD after
Mhm.
anything that she went through. And I guess that's what makes it difficult for me to suspend belief at the end. Like, once you get to the end, it's like, okay, everything's hunky-dory, and they just have to figure out how to navigate this relationship while he's a commander and all the things. I'm just like, girl doesn't have, like, PTSD, nightmares, anxiety.
I
Like,
mean, it this is gonna this is gonna be so stupid, but I mean, it is the 1700s. Does those things even exist back then?
well, they may not exist in, like, medical terms, but I mean, they still
Mhm.
existed.
Yeah, I know, I'm just being silly. Trying to end on
Oh,
a laughing, happy note.
sorry.
It's
But
okay.
all that to say, I do rate it a 4. I love the story. I love that she ended up with all 3. The consensual dubcon scenes were very hot, very well done. I would read Pam Godwin again under the right circumstances. Like, I would either want it to be a book that somebody I know has read and, like, knows me well enough to know if I can handle it, or I almost, and this is why I struggle. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but I also want to be I'm never going into a Pam Godwin book blind again.
Fair. That's
So,
fair.
okay. Any last words before we walk the
S
plank?
stay tu stay tuned for a new episode of how we're gonna rate our romances, because 'cause I'm quite excited about this. This
Yes.
changes things.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
it.
I'm excited. Me too.
Yep.
All right, y'all. If you have read Sea of Ruin or any other Pam Godwin book, we would love to hear from you. Find us on Instagram at Bones of the Story, STORIE, and tag us in your stories and let us know what you thought. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us on the journey into the shadows of love, where dark romance stories come to light.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Bones of the Story as much as we did. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us.
And to stay updated on all things dark romance, follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
We'd also love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, ideas, or even your own dark romance stories with us. Drop us a line at bonesofthestory@gmail.com.
Remember, our next tantalizing episode is just around the corner, so keep your hearts open and your senses sharp.
Until then, embrace the darkness and let the stories continue to stir your deepest desires.
This is Misty
And Jen,
signing off
from Bones of the Story.